Episode 2: Building Rockets and Cars, a crazy man's simultaneous adventure. The craziest startup in human history. He's using his entire fortune to take on 2 impossible industries. At the end of the last episode, 31-year-old Elon Musk, holding over $180 million in cash, stood at the peak of his life. He had wealth that an ordinary person couldn't achieve in a lifetime. He could buy an island, travel around the world, and live any luxurious life he wanted. But everyone guessed wrong. When a person no longer has to worry about survival and wealth, what does he live for? Musk gave the craziest and most romantic answer with his actions: live for dreams. And his dream isn't on Earth, but on that red, lonely planet, Mars. Today, we're going to tell a story that sounds like a fairy tale. How an internet tycoon put down his billions and plunged head first into a field he knew nothing about: aerospace. This is a crazy story of being humiliated, laughed at, and finally deciding to build rockets himself. It's in this story that a great company, SpaceX, which would later completely change the history of human space exploration, quietly came into being. Musk's obsession with space began in childhood. While other kids were reading fairy tales, he was already immersed in Asimov's Foundation series and Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Those grand ideas about interstellar travel and human colonization of other planets planted a seed in his heart. This seed started to grow like crazy after he got a huge fortune. He moved to Los Angeles and joined the Mars Society. There, he met a group of Mars nuts like him. They'd stay up all night discussing how to transform the Martian atmosphere and how to build a human base on Mars. But Musk soon found that these discussions were just armchair talk. Everyone was talking about dreams, but no one was actually taking action. He felt deeply disappointed. He realized that in the decades after the Apollo moon landing program ended, human space exploration had not only made no progress, but had also stagnated. The public had long lost interest in space. NASA's budget was severely cut, and there were no more grand goals to inspire the new generation of engineers and dreamers. Musk thought someone had to step up and do something to reignite human passion for space. His initial idea was very creative and full of idealism. He wanted to plan a charity project called Mars Oasis. The plan was simple: buy a rocket and send an automated greenhouse to Mars. This greenhouse would be filled with nutrient gel and earth seeds. When it landed on Mars, it would automatically unfold, and the seeds would germinate inside. Through the camera, people on Earth would be able to see, for the first time, a touch of green life on the red Mars. It was a brilliant marketing plan. Musk believed that this photo full of life from an alien planet would make the front page of all the newspapers in the world. It would be like a thunderclap, waking up the public's longing for space exploration again. He didn't want to colonize Mars himself. He just wanted to give a wake-up call, reminding everyone that we have a greater future ahead of us. For this romantic idea, he was ready to invest $20 million. The idea was great, but reality gave him a big slap in the face, because he soon found that the biggest obstacle to this plan wasn't the greenhouse, nor the seeds, but the most basic and most expensive thing, the rocket. Elon Musk needed a launch vehicle. He scoured the global market, but found no cost-effective options. Rockets in the US were outrageously expensive, and suppliers weren't keen on partnering with this up-and-coming tech entrepreneur. So, he set his sights on countries with a deep-seated aerospace industry. Among the Soviet-era aerospace assets were intercontinental missiles that could be converted into launch vehicles. At the end of 2001, Musk and two partners went there seeking cooperation. The trip was full of expectations, but also faced challenges. They met with local aerospace veterans. Musk expected a tech and business-focused exchange. However, the interaction between the two sides fell short of expectations. The locals seemed to pay little heed to the three casually dressed American visitors, perhaps seeing them as entrepreneurs just looking for a novel experience. The first meeting didn't go well. There were communication barriers. When Musk presented his space exploration ideas, he got no positive response. The discussion strayed from the core issue. At one exchange event, the atmosphere was lively, but they didn't dig into the key details of rocket procurement. In the end, the trip didn't result in a cooperation deal. When Musk returned to the US, he still hadn't got the launch vehicle he needed. But he didn't give up. In February 2002, he went back with a more detailed plan for another round of talks. This meeting entered into substantial discussions, but the price the other side proposed far exceeded Musk's expectations. Musk tried to negotiate, thinking the quote was unreasonable. The negotiation hit a deadlock. During this time, something happened that made Musk feel disrespected. This prompted Musk to end the negotiation. He left the meeting room and headed straight back to the US. On the return flight, he thought deeply. His fellow travelers thought the project's prospects were dim. But Musk's mind was racing. He opened his laptop and started making detailed calculations. He analyzed a crucial question: the composition of rocket costs. He listed the main raw materials one by one: aerospace aluminum, alloy, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, etc. The calculation results were an eye-opener. The raw material cost of a rocket was just a tiny fraction of its final selling price. He realized that the high price mainly came from a huge, inefficient R&D and production system. Traditional suppliers had no real incentive to cut costs. At that moment, a breakthrough idea took shape in his mind. He turned to his partners and clearly stated a new direction. "I think we can try to build our own rockets." This proposal really surprised his companions. Entering the rocket manufacturing field was usually seen as a major challenge that required national-level resources and top-notch tech capabilities. And Musk's background was mainly in the internet field. and his aerospace knowledge was mostly self-taught. This was definitely a highly challenging plan. But Musk was determined. The 2 attempts at external cooperation had profoundly changed his strategy. He was no longer content to be just a buyer. He was set on becoming an industry innovator. His goal went beyond his initial Mars exploration idea. He was committed to completely revolutionizing the cost structure of the aerospace industry, significantly lowering the threshold of space exploration and making it more accessible. He was convinced that if he could reduce the launch cost to 1/10 of the current level, it would completely reshape the space landscape and make it possible for humans to become a multi-planetary species. This vision was grander than his original plan. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, Musk had completed a strategic transformation. He went from a dreamer seeking a rocket to an entrepreneur determined to build rockets. In June 2002, a new company was founded in a warehouse in California. The company was named Space Exploration Technologies, abbreviated as SpaceX. Musk invested $100 million of his own money into the company, almost half of what he got from the PayPal deal. He put a huge fortune into an extremely ambitious goal. However, what few people know is that this was just the beginning of his grand plan. While he was fully immersed in Rocket R&D, another equally ambitious plan focused on energy and transportation transformation was also in the works. This entrepreneur was pushing forward to groundbreaking plans at the same time. How would he handle the dual challenges? And what peaks and valleys would he experience on these 2 exploratory paths? This decision sounds like an out-and-out joke. Back then, the aerospace field was an exclusive club for national powers and military-industrial giants. Its entry threshold was dauntingly high, and its rules were set by a group of gray-haired senior experts. A 31-year-old young man who made his fortune from writing software wanted to break into this field. It was like an amateur challenging a world heavyweight boxing champion. Everyone was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. But they all underestimated Elon Musk's learning ability, charisma, and his terrifying execution power to turn his dream into reality at all costs. Today, we're going to tell the story of the birth of SpaceX. It's a legend about the first principles, a group of geniuses ignited by dreams, and building a launch base from scratch on a secluded Pacific island. In this story, you'll see how a crazy dream gradually became a real and great company. After deciding to build rockets, the first problem Musk faced wasn't money, nor was it talent. It was himself. He simply didn't know anything about rockets. He knew he couldn't just be a money-throwing boss. If he wanted to disrupt the industry and fundamentally reduce costs, he had to become the most tech-savvy person in this field. He had to be able to talk to the top engineers, judge whether their solutions were feasible, and make the most crucial technical decisions himself. He embarked on a legendary made journey. He turned himself into a sponge, frantically soaking up all the knowledge about rocket science. He bought all the professional books he could find, from rocket propulsion elements to fundamentals of astrodynamics. These 10-shoe books that even professional students found a headache became his bedtime reads. His learning method wasn't rote memorization. It was the core secret of his success that he would mention repeatedly later: first principles. What are first principles? It's about breaking all things down to their most basic and essential components, and then starting from there to derive and reconstruct. He didn't care about the way we've always done it. He only cared about what the laws of physics allow us to do. He would directly call the legendary figures in the aerospace field, like Jim Cantrell, the chief engineer of Boeing. He would be like a curious student, asking all kinds of seemingly naive but essential questions. Cantrell later recalled that Musk was like a vacuum cleaner, able to suck up all the knowledge in your brain about a certain topic within minutes. In this way, he quickly built a complete rocket knowledge system in his brain. He might not have decades of work experience, but his understanding of the underlying physical logic even surpassed that of many senior engineers. Because the thinking of those engineers was confined by industry conventions and traditional practices, and Musk was like a wild man, unrestricted by any rules. Starting directly from the source of physics to find the solution with the lowest cost and highest efficiency. After equipping himself, he started looking for his comrades in arms. He knew one person's power was limited. He needed to find a group of geniuses as crazy as him and as passionate about space to jointly complete this impossible task. Musk's recruitment method was as extraordinary as he was. He didn't want the big company employees from traditional giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin, who were used to the 9 to -5 routine and huge budgets. He was looking for rebels who truly loved aerospace, had built things with their own hands, and were dissatisfied with the existing industry rules. He would attend gatherings of amateur rocket enthusiasts and search for shining ideas on various aerospace forums. His first key recruitment, and one of the sole figures of SpaceX, was Tom Mueller, a rocket engine expert. Mueller was working at another aerospace company at that time, but in his spare time, he built the world's largest amateur liquid fuel rocket engine in his garage. He was exactly the kind of person Musk dreamed of, a passionate and highly skilled engineering genius. Musk invited Mueller to his home. Mueller thought it was just an ordinary meeting, but when he entered Musk's study, he was completely shocked. The bookshelves were filled with Russian-language rocket engineering manuals. Musk's in-depth understanding of rocket technology even surprised Mueller, a senior expert. Musk told Mueller that he didn't want to play around anymore. He wanted to establish a real rocket company and challenge the entire industry in a brand new way. Mueller was inspired. He gave up his stable job and became one of the founding employees of SpaceX, in charge of the propulsion department. In the following months, Musk, like a talent scout, scouted a dream team of founding members from all corners. It included aerodynamics experts, structural engineers, avionics engineers. Each of them was the best in their respective fields, but more importantly, they all had restless hearts. Musk's interview questions also became a legend in Silicon Valley. He wouldn't ask you, "What's your career plan?" He would directly give you an extremely difficult engineering problem and watch how you thought and solved it. One of his most famous questions was, "You're standing on the Earth's surface. You walk 1 mile south, 1 mile west, and 1 mile north, and you end up back at the starting point. Where are you?" This question tested not knowledge, but the flexibility of thinking and problem-solving ability. The answer is the North Pole, or a certain circle near the South Pole. In this way, he screened out a group of the smartest and most tenacious minds. In the summer of 2002, these people gathered in a huge and empty warehouse in El Segundo, California. This was the starting point of SpaceX. There were no fancy offices, no hierarchical systems. Musk's desk was right in the middle of the factory, and anyone could walk over to discuss problems with him at any time. The whole company was like a huge and efficient garage workshop. They started the design and manufacturing of their first rocket, the Falcon 1, at an astonishing speed. But soon, they encountered a problem even more troublesome than technology. Where could they launch it? Building a rocket is just the first step. You also need a launch site. Musk's initial idea was to rent Vandenberg Air Force Base from the US Air Force. But the process was full of bureaucratic red tape and unbearable delays. What's more, those Air Force officials simply didn't believe that this little-known small company could build a real rocket. They were worried that if the launch failed, it would damage their expensive launch facilities. After hitting one roadblock after another, Musk realized that he couldn't entrust the fate of his company to these bureaucrats. He had to have his own launch site, a place that he could fully control and conduct launches and tests at any time. He spread out a world map and started looking. This place had to be close to the equator so that it could make the most of the Earth's rotational speed, and it had to be far from densely populated areas to ensure safety. Finally, his finger pointed to a tiny dot in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, almost invisible on the map. Kwajalein Atoll. Kwajalein Atoll is part of the Marshall Islands and also a U.S. military missile defense test base. It almost perfectly met all of Musk's requirements. But choosing this place also meant choosing a logistical nightmare. It's an isolated place. It takes several layovers and a whole day to fly there from Los Angeles. There are no decent industrial facilities on the island, not enough accommodation, and even the internet signal is extremely weak. Even worse, the environment here is a hell for sophisticated rocket equipment. The air is full of salt and moisture. Any metal parts will rust quickly, if not treated within a few hours. Tropical downpours come out of nowhere, and poisonous scorpions and huge crabs are everywhere. The SpaceX team came to this God-forsaken corner and started their arduous construction work. They lived in makeshift trailers, enduring the heat and mosquito bites. They had to generate their own electricity and purify their own water. All the equipment, tools, and parts had to be shipped by ship and plane from thousands of miles away in the US mainland. A delay of even a single screw halt. They not only had to fight against the harsh natural environment, but also deal with the local complex culture and politics. But in such a difficult environment, these engineers from California managed to build a modern rocket launch site with their own hands on a desolate beach. They built huge hangars, installed launch pads, and laid miles of cables. At the end of 2005, when the first Falcon 1 rocket was shipped in sections to Kwajalein Atoll and finally stood on the launch pad, everyone felt a sense of surreal dizziness. That crazy idea that once only existed in Musk's mind, that daydream laughed at by everyone, was now right in front of them. It was a real, shiny metal rocket about to fly into space. The team was assembled, the base was built, and the rocket was ready. Now, there's only one last step: ignition. Can this dream, crafted in the most primitive way by a group of rebels on a forgotten island, successfully break free from the Earth's gravity? Or will it, as everyone predicted, turn into a puff of smoke in a blaze of glory? This first launch will determine the fate of SpaceX and also Musk's destiny. On August 2nd, 2008, it was SpaceX's third launch, and everyone thought it was going to be the last one. At this time, Musk was on the verge of personal bankruptcy. His two companies, SpaceX and Tesla, were like two huge bottomless pits, gobbling up cash, almost exhausting all his wealth. He even had to borrow money from friends to cover his living expenses. The fate of the whole company rested on this rocket. If this launch failed again, SpaceX would have no funds to build a fourth rocket. The company would directly declare bankruptcy, and all their dreams would go up in smoke. The whole team was shrouded in a solemn, all or nothing atmosphere. This time, the launch process was as perfect as it could get. Ignition, lift off, climbing ... Everything was as precise as in a textbook. The rocket smoothly soared into the sky, and all the data was flawless. Then came the most crucial moment, the separation of the first and second stages. This was the key step that hadn't been perfectly achieved in the previous two launches. Everyone held their breath. The screen showed that the separation was successful. The first stage engine detached smoothly, and the second stage engine ignited successfully. In the control room, there was an instant explosion of thunderous cheers and screams. People hugged each other and wept with joy. They had made it. They finally did it. However, in this ocean of joy, Musk and a few core engineers stared fixedly at the screen, and their faces gradually turned pale, because they saw a tiny but fatal anomaly in the data stream. The second stage engine, after ignition, burned for only a few seconds and then shut down due to a sudden drop in pressure. The rocket became an expensive piece of space junk in free fall. What happened? The result of the subsequent investigation was like a cruel black humor. The problem lay exactly in the improvement they thought was perfect. To ensure the smooth separation of the two stages, they slightly delayed the ignition time of the second stage engine. But they didn't expect that the newly designed first stage engine of the Falcon 1 still had a tiny residual thrust after it was shut down. It was this negligible thrust that made the separated first stage rocket, like a ghost, catch up and gently kiss the just ignited second stage rocket. This fatal touch led to the failure of the second stage rocket. This was the most perfect launch and the most tragic failure. They solved all the known problems but were defeated by a brand new, unheard of problem. When the failure was confirmed, the cheers in the control room turned into dead silence, and then came the uncontrollable sobs. Many engineers, these tough guys on normal days, broke down and cried on the spot. Their 3-year hard work and all their hopes were completely shattered at the moment closest to success. SpaceX seemed to have reached its end. Musk dragged his heavy feet onto the stage, facing a group of employees who had lost all hope. His eyes were bloodshot, and his voice was hoarse. Everyone thought he would announce the dissolution of the company. But he said those words that would be quoted countless times later. "I will never, ever give up." He told everyone that he would do everything possible to find funds to build a fourth rocket. But everyone knew that this might just be a feeble consolation. Musk was at the end of his rope, and his entire empire was on the verge of collapse. Did he and his SpaceX really have a fourth chance? Or was this third failure the final ending of this solemn epic? On March 24, 2006, at Kwajalein Atoll, after countless technical glitches and weather delays, the first launch of the Falcon 1 finally entered the countdown. In the control room, the atmosphere was so tense it felt like it had solidified. All the engineers were staring intently at the data streams on the screens, and their hearts were pounding along with the countdown numbers. 3, 2, 1, ignition! Amid the deafening roar, the bottom of the Falcon 1 spewed out orange-red flames. The huge thrust made it slowly but firmly break free from the launch pad and soar into the air. It worked. It was flying. There was a brief burst of cheers in the control room. The rocket shot straight up into the sky with a perfect attitude. For a brand new team and a brand new rocket, this was a perfect start. Musk stood outside the control room, looking up at the shrinking dot in the sky, and a rare smile appeared on his face. However, this joy only lasted for 27 seconds. Just as the rocket climbed to a certain height, a ball of fire suddenly appeared above the main engine. Then, the rocket started to lose control, deviating from its intended trajectory. It was like a wounded behemoth, trailing smoke and falling powerlessly towards the sea. Finally, it crashed into the sea, not far from the launch pad, creating a huge splash. It was all over. In the control room, there was a deathly silence. The engineers, who had been cheering just moments ago, were now standing there like statues, staring at the disappearing signal on the screen, their faces filled with disbelief and great disappointment. The smile on Musk's face had also frozen. He silently walked into the control room, patted the engineers on the shoulders, and said in an almost calm tone, "I know this is tough, but please save all the data." The results of the subsequent investigation left everyone with a sense of absurd pain. The cause of this catastrophic failure was not some complex design flaw, but an extremely tiny yet fatal oversight. An aluminum B-nut, which hadn't been properly protected against corrosion, was corroded in the salty and humid air of Kwajalein Atoll. Under the huge pressure during the rocket's ascent, the corroded nut cracked, causing fuel leakage and a fire. A part worth just a few cents had destroyed a rocket worth millions of dollars. The first attempt ended in the most heartbreaking way. Nearly half of Musk's $100 million investment had been burned. But he didn't have time to be sad. He told the team that failure was expected, and the important thing was to learn from it. They picked up the rocket's wreckage and their broken spirits and headed back to the factory in California. They believed that next time they would succeed. Exactly 1 year later, on March 21st, 2007, the SpaceX team returned to Kwajalein Atoll. They brought a brand new, fully improved Falcon 1. They fixed all the problems from the last time and checked every detail thousands of times. This time, everyone was full of confidence. The launch was perfect. The rocket took off smoothly. The first stage engine worked normally, and all the data showed everything was okay. It successfully broke the sound barrier and flew higher and farther than last time. In the control room, the atmosphere was much more relaxed than last time. People even started high-fiving each other to celebrate. However, just when the rocket had been flying for about 5 minutes and was about to perform the first and second stage separation, another accident happened. The data on the screen showed that the rocket's second stage engine started to have a high-frequency harmonic vibration. This vibration got stronger and stronger, like a lullaby of death. Eventually, the rocket started to spin out of control, like a drunk dancer, tracing a strange arc in the sky. Although it finally made it out of the atmosphere and reached the edge of space by inertia, it had completely lost control and couldn't send the Mork payload into the intended orbit. The mission failed again. This failure hit the team much harder than the last one, because the problem was no longer a trivial part, but a more core system design issue. The sloshing of fuel in the tank, the so-called pogo effect, caused a fatal resonance. This was an extremely complex fluid dynamics problem. Musk stepped up again. He gathered all the dejected employees and gave a famous speech. He told them, "Although we didn't succeed in getting into orbit, we are the first private company in history to have successfully sent a two-stage rocket into space. He tried to boost morale and squeeze a bit of sweetness from the bitter fruit of failure. But everyone knew that the company's situation was precarious. Musk's personal wealth was being depleted at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, his other big bet in California, Tesla Motors, was also stuck in production hell, burning through his money like crazy. SpaceX was running out of time and money. They only had one last chance. While Elon Musk was looking up at the stars, pouring all his wealth and energy into the seemingly impossible rocket-building business, an equally revolutionary opportunity from the ground was quietly approaching him. His life seemed destined to race on two parallel and equally crazy tracks simultaneously. While SpaceX was pushing the limits of physics, another revolution was brewing in a garage in California. This revolution was about batteries, speed, and a dream that had been mocked and forgotten by traditional automotive giants for nearly a century: high-performance electric vehicles. You'll see how Musk was drawn to an electric sports car project and eventually became its biggest backer, and the inevitable conflict that was sown from the start between him and the brilliant founding team. In the early 2000s, electric cars were almost a joke in the mainstream automotive industry. People's impression of them was still stuck on those slow, short range, and ugly golf carts. Everyone thought electric cars were just a pipe dream of unrealistic environmentalists. However, two engineers from Silicon Valley, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, didn't think so. Eberhard was a natural product manager with a sharp intuition for technology. He noticed that the lithium battery technology in consumer electronics had made rapid progress in the past decade. Their energy density was getting higher and the cost was getting lower. He had a revolutionary idea. Could combining thousands of laptop lithium-ion batteries provide enough power for a high-performance sports car? This was a genius insight. He didn't try to invent a brand new battery technology, but cleverly used the existing, mature, and rapidly cost-dropping technology. In 2003, Eberhard and Tarpenning founded a company to realize this dream. They named it after the greatest electrical engineer in history, Tesla Motors. Their first goal wasn't to build an affordable electric car for the masses, but an ultra-high-performance electric sports car that would outshine all Porsches and Ferraris. They wanted to use absolute speed and amazing design to shatter the public's stereotype of electric cars as boring and slow. They found Lotus Cars in the UK, bought the chassis of its Elise sports car, and then started to fit their designed battery packs and electric motors into this small and lightweight body. The idea was great, but reality was tough. Building cars is an even more money-burning game than building rockets. They quickly ran out of their startup funds. They urgently needed an investor with deep pockets who truly understood their technological vision. Just then, Elon Musk's name came into their view. Through a friend's introduction, Eberhard met this new internet millionaire who had just achieved financial freedom through PayPal. This meeting was a fateful encounter in Silicon Valley history. Eberhard detailed his technological concept to Musk, a huge battery pack composed of 6831 Panasonic 18,650 lithium-ion batteries, an AC induction motor that could provide amazing torque, and a complex battery management system that could integrate it all perfectly. Musk was completely captivated. This was exactly how he thought. Eberhard's idea was in line with his first principles. It wasn't restricted by the rules of the traditional automotive industry, but directly started from the essence of physics to find the optimal solution. More importantly, Eberhard's vision perfectly matched the sustainable energy future that Musk had envisioned in college. Musk always believed that humanity must break away from fossil fuel dependence, and electric cars were the key step to achieving this goal. He saw the great potential of this project. He knew that this wasn't just a sports car. It was the vanguard of an upcoming energy revolution. In early 2004, Musk made a decision. He invested $6.3 million in Tesla, became the company's largest shareholder, and took on the role of chairman of the board. For Eberhard and Tesla at that time, Musk's arrival was like a timely rain. He not only brought life-saving funds, but also his profound insights in engineering, software, and business. In the initial honeymoon period, the two sides got along very well. Musk was deeply involved in the product design process. He insisted on using lighter and stronger carbon fiber to make the body. He personally rejected the initial design draft and demanded that the vehicle's shape be more streamlined and futuristic. He even had extremely strict requirements for the design of the door handles. He wasn't just an investor. He regarded himself as another founder of the company and the chief architect of the product. However, it was also during this deep involvement that the invisible string of conflict over control and dominance between him and founder Eberhard was quietly tightened. Hey guys! The root of the conflict lies in the fundamental differences between the personalities and working styles of two guys. Martin Eberhard is a typical Silicon Valley product genius. He's full of passion and has great vision. But when it comes to cost control and engineering details, he's a bit too optimistic and idealistic. On the other hand, Elon Musk is a complete engineering obsessive. He believes in numbers and demands that everything must go through strict calculations and verifications. He can't stand any vague or presumptuous decisions. When the development of Tesla's prototype car, the Roadster, started to face constant delays and cost overruns, the alarm bells went off in Musk's mind. He found that many of the technical specifications promised by Eberhard were overly optimistic. For example, the initially promised battery cost was simply unachievable in reality, and the promised vehicle weight kept increasing due to all the new equipment. What Musk couldn't stand the most was Eberhard's attitude of trying to gloss over the problems and avoid conflicts when facing issues. Musk would directly point out the project's problems at the board meeting with a series of sharp and cold data. He'd mercilessly question every decision made by Eberhard. Eberhard, however, thought Musk's actions were overstepping his bounds, interfering with the company's daily operations, and challenging his authority as the CEO. He felt that Musk didn't understand the complexity of the automotive industry and was just an outsider who liked to boss around. The relationship between the two, which started with mutual admiration, gradually turned into suspicion and opposition. The company's employees were forced to choose sides between these two powerful leaders. On one side was the passionate founder, CEO, who was like a big family man, and on the other side was the cold, rigorous chairman who held the company's financial lifeline. This internal rift made the company's R&D progress even slower and more chaotic. While SpaceX's rockets were exploding and failing time and time again on that small Pacific island, Tesla, the sports car carrying the dream of an energy revolution, was stuck in the mud, burning through Musk's personal wealth like crazy. Musk realized he was in a terrible two-front war situation. Both of his companies were burning money at an astonishing rate, pushing him towards personal bankruptcy. He knew he couldn't just be a behind-the-scenes chairman anymore. Just like what he'd experienced at Zip2 and PayPal. If he wanted to save the company and make the sports car move towards the future as he envisioned, he had to take the steering wheel and gain absolute control. A brutal fight for the control of Tesla was inevitable, and the outcome of this fight would directly determine Tesla's fate, and also write the most important footnote for Musk's later tyrant reputation. So, how will he deal with the conflict with founder Eberhard? And how will he pull this sports car out of the mud? On the journey to the stars and the vast ocean, he founded SpaceX. On a forgotten Pacific island, he fought against the physical laws of rockets and the harsh, natural environment. On the path to sustainable energy, he took over Tesla, trying to use lithium batteries and ultimate speed to revolutionize a century-old automotive industry. Any single adventure would be enough to drain all the energy and wealth of an ordinary entrepreneur. But Elon Musk chose a path that no one had ever taken before and may never be taken again. He decided to win two wars simultaneously. Just imagine this kind of life. On Monday morning, you're at Tesla's headquarters in Los Angeles, arguing heatedly with a bunch of engineers about a design flaw in the gearbox. You find that the project costs have skyrocketed. The delivery date has been postponed again and again, and your founder and CEO seems to be trying to hide the severity of the problem from you. On Tuesday, you board a plane. After more than a dozen hours of flying and transfers, you land on that isolated island in the middle of the Pacific, called Kwajalein Atoll. You step out of the cabin, and a hot, humid, salty air hits you in the face. You see your multi-million-dollar rocket lying quietly in the hangar because of the corrosion of a tiny part, and the launch is nowhere in sight. This time, you're facing a group of angry investors and worried board members. They're questioning you about why both companies are burning money at an alarming rate without any sign of success. This was Elon Musk's daily life in those years. His life became a non-stop fighting operation, shuttling between two battlefields. He's like a schizophrenic commander. On one battlefield, he's up against the basic laws of physics, fluid mechanics, and materials science. He has to think about fuel sloshing, harmonic resonance, and thrust vector control of rocket engines. On the other battlefield, he's fighting against human nature, the complexity of supply, chain management, deep-seated industry practices, and the growing contradictions and mistrust within the team. Both of these wars require 100% of his energy. But Musk tries to allocate 200% of his energy to himself. At SpaceX, every launch is like a game of Russian roulette. The stake is his real, hard-earned personal wealth. Unlike those space agencies with national budgets, every penny SpaceX spends comes from Musk's personal income from PayPal transactions. The manufacturing cost of a Falcon 1 rocket is about $6 to $7 million. Every failed launch means a Beverly Hills mansion going up in smoke in an instant. This huge financial pressure is beyond what outsiders can imagine. It's like a ghost hanging over every decision. But even more painful than the financial loss is the mental torture. Rocket launch is an extremely fragile system engineering. With thousands of parts, if just one goes wrong, it can lead to a catastrophic outcome. The first launch was ruined by a corroded B-nut. The second launch failed because of an unexpected fuel sloshing effect. Every failure makes Musk and his team question themselves. Did we miss something? Are we on the wrong track? Is this dream just impossible to achieve? After the second failed launch, the team's morale hit rock bottom. Many engineers, some of the smartest minds in the world, started to doubt themselves. As the only source of morale for the team, Musk can't afford to fall. He has to step up right away, find something positive from the ruins of failure, and inspire the almost broken team. He's like a battlefield priest, preaching to his soldiers again and again, telling them to believe in the inevitability of victory. But inside, his heart is filled with anxiety and unease. He wakes up in the middle of the night, dreaming about the rocket exploding in the air. He knows that he's running out of chances. If the challenges of SpaceX are like a hard science fiction about physics and engineering, then the predicament of Tesla is a realistic business drama about human nature and management. Here, Musk was facing a more chaotic and enraging situation. He found that building an electric car that can run is completely different from building one that can be mass-produced and is reliable in quality. Tesla's first product, the Roadster, was in the production hell from the very beginning. Its core component, the gearbox, had a fatal design flaw. It couldn't bear the huge torque suddenly released by the motor and kept braking during tests. This meant the whole vehicle's transmission system had to be redesigned. The battery pack, in its original design, lacked an effective cooling system, posing a huge safety hazard. Every single component, from the doors, lights, to the seats, was delayed due to supplier issues and constant design changes. The project cost was snowballing. The initially estimated cost of $60,000 quickly soared to $100,000, or even $120,000. This meant the company was losing money on every car sold. What made Musk even more angry than the technical problems was the management chaos and the founding team's optimism. He thought that CEO Martin Eberhard, although a product genius, lacked the most basic respect for the complexity of engineering and cost control. He would paint an overly rosy picture for the board and investors while downplaying the real-world problems. Musk couldn't tolerate what he saw as dishonesty. He started getting more involved in the company's daily management. He would bypass Eberhard and call engineers directly to ask about the real progress of the project. He would fly to Detroit himself to negotiate with suppliers to solve problems that should have been handled by the CEO. His desk was like the command center of a war room. He used his all-powerful laptop to handle a flurry of emails and reports from both companies simultaneously. He would argue with SpaceX engineers until late at night over the vibration data of a rocket fuel pump. Then, right after that, he would yell at the supply chain team about the cost of a Tesla door seal. He became more and more paranoid and inconsiderate. He asked his employees to work 100 hours a week, just like him. He would fire employees mercilessly for a tiny mistake. His demon mode was fully activated during this period, because he knew that his two battleships were leaking and sinking at an alarming rate. And he was the only one on the ships who knew how to fix the leaks and was willing to do anything to fix them. He had no time to soothe emotions or care about others' feelings. His only goal was to get these two ships to the shore before they sank. The pressure of fighting on two fronts finally turned into a perfect financial storm. Every launch of SpaceX was burning through millions of dollars in cash. And Tesla was like an endless pit, needing a large amount of money injected every month to keep up with R&D and production. Musk's $180 million fortune from PayPal was evaporating right before his eyes. He started selling off everything. He sold his legendary McLaren F1 sports car. He mortgaged his mansion. By early 2008, he was on the verge of personal financial bankruptcy. He even had to borrow money from friends, like Google co-founder Larry Page, to pay employees' salaries and his own living expenses. He became a paper billionaire, but a cash flow pauper. Meanwhile, the outside world's doubts and mockery of him reached their peak. The media was full of articles bad-mouthing him, labeling him a madman and a fraud. A special blog site called Tesla Death Watch emerged, updating daily with the latest evidence of the company's impending collapse. His two teams were also exhausted. At SpaceX, the consecutive failures made many people start to doubt if the goal was realistic. At Tesla, the conflict with the founder had become public, and the company was filled with division and mistrust. He was almost fighting against the whole world. He was standing on the edge of a cliff with an abyss behind him. On one side were the burning rocket wreckages. On the other side was the electric sports car stuck in the mud. And the money in his pocket was not enough to save these two children he loved as his own. He had to make a choice. Should he abandon one to save the other? Or should he be like a gambler who had lost all his chips and bet his last hope on the next spin of the roulette? The year 2008, which would later be written into history, became the ultimate test in Musk's life. In this year, he would experience the hellish third launch failure and launch a brutal internal coup to take absolute control of Tesla. How would he stage a thrilling comeback from the ruins of this two-front war? This is the story we'll tell in the next episode, Hell and Heaven.